Halloween morning should have carried the warmth of routine. Coffee brewing, kids in costumes, porch decorations, a world moving forward. But inside one quiet home in Hays, Kansas, the lights were off. The bedroom was still. And 26-year-old Kristen Trickle lay on the floor beside a revolver almost as large as her forearm. The first officer who entered felt something he couldn't shake. "This doesn't look right," he whispered. And he was right. Nothing about that room added up. Not the gun, not the angle, not the darkness, and certainly not the man standing in the hallway. To understand the weight of this case, you have to understand who Kristen was. She was bright, family-oriented, soft-spoken but funny in her own sharp way. She loved her nieces and nephews, loved baking, loved her dogs, and had plans, real plans, for the future she was building. She wasn't the type to vanish into despair. She wasn't reckless or chaotic. She wasn't someone living on a razor's edge. Friends described her as steady. In photos, she glows. Wide smile, warm eyes, the kind of expression that tells you she loved deeply and wanted to be loved the same way in return. But the world she lived in behind closed doors was more fragile than it seemed. At first, Kristen believed she'd found stability with her husband, Colby Trickle. But relationships built on insecurity and hidden motives rarely stay peaceful. Over time, Kristen confided subtle things to friends. Small cracks, uneasy feelings, moments where Colby's behavior didn't match his promises. He was impatient, controlling, inconsistent, and sometimes cold. But the most dangerous part wasn't his mood swings. It was the secrets he carried. Secrets she didn't know existed until investigators uncovered them years later. 10 days before Kristen died, Colby was alone on his phone, typing something into Google that would become one of the most chilling pieces of evidence in the entire case. Life insurance payout for spouse. No one knew it at the time. No one suspected the storm gathering quietly in their home. Not even Kristen. October 31st, 2019. A day filled with costumes and candy for most families. But inside Kristen's home, something was wrong. The house was quiet. The blinds closed. Colby later told investigators he had been asleep. He claimed he woke to find Kristen dead. He claimed she had used his .357 revolver, a large frame, heavy gun requiring significant force to fire. He said she killed herself in the dark. But as detectives would soon realize, none of that made sense. When Colby dialed 911, his tone was unusual, detached, flat, missing the urgency that typically comes with discovering a loved one unresponsive. He didn't sound panicked. He didn't sound confused. He didn't sound like a man who had just lost the woman he'd married. He sounded composed. The dispatcher guided him through procedures. Colby followed them mechanically, but officers later noted his voice lacked the tremors, the shock, the cracks that almost always appear in legitimate trauma. When responders arrived, his emotions didn't match the moment. Instead of grief, there was a strange steadiness. Instead of fear, there was control. And detectives felt the unease almost immediately. Investigators stepped into the bedroom. The first thing they noticed was the darkness. Colby said Kristen had turned off the lights before the shooting, an odd detail, considering suicide scenes rarely occur in total darkness. The second detail, the gun placement. The .357 revolver rested near her body, positioned in a way that didn't match a self-inflicted underchin shot. The angle seemed wrong. The recoil path seemed wrong. The distance seemed wrong. And Kristen, barely over 120 pounds, would have struggled to handle such a weapon without it falling in a completely different direction. Crime scene investigators exchanged glances. Quiet ones. The kind that mean, something's off. The third detail, her mobile phone, positioned with care, not dropped in panic. It was as if the scene had been constructed, not lived. Despite the officer's suspicions, the county coroner initially ruled the death a suicide. And that ruling, that single word, cast a shadow over the entire investigation. Slowed the case. It delayed evidence collection. It gave Colby time. Time to rearrange, time to grieve publicly, time to redirect suspicion. He cried at the funeral. He stood beside her family. He accepted sympathy. And quietly, within weeks, he collected more than $120,000 in life insurance money. To the world, he was a widower. To investigators, he was a puzzle waiting to break open. While the official ruling said suicide, detectives in Hayes couldn't shake their unease. So they did what investigators always do when the living insists on silence. They pulled digital records, search histories, phone logs, private messages. That's when they discovered the second life Colby Trickle had been living, the one Kristen never knew about. He had been exchanging flirtatious messages with another woman. Messages with energy and excitement he hadn't shown his wife in months. He hinted at being unhappy at home, at wanting new beginnings, at fantasizing about a different life. To prosecutors, this wasn't harmless flirting. It was a motive, a new romance, fresh start, a life without marital obligations, and, importantly, a life paid for with Kristen's insurance money. Within weeks of Kristen's death, Colby received over $120,000 from 2 life insurance policies taken out on her. Grieving spouses often struggle to even process paperwork. Colby, however, wasted no time. He spent money rapidly, impulsively, on items investigators would later call deeply disturbing, given the nature of his wife's death. One of the darkest purchases surfaced because the seller kept a digital invoice. A life-sized sex doll, bought just months after Kristen was buried. Detectives didn't need to speculate. The timeline told its own story. Kristen dies. Insurance payout hits. Affair continues. Purchases escalate. Grief is unusually absent. It wasn't just suspicious. It was cold. Investigators began revisiting the question everyone was too afraid to ask. Did Kristen truly take her own life? And to answer it, they brought in a forensic psychologist to construct what's known as a psychological autopsy, a detailed analysis of a person's mental state before death. They gathered her text, her work schedule, conversations with friends, future goals, photos, journals, medical records, therapist notes, if any, statements from co-workers. Everything pointed to one conclusion. Kristen wasn't suicidal. Not even close. She had plans. She had routines. She was making future appointments. She was ordering supplies. She was communicating normally with family. Nothing in her behavior resembled someone in crisis. And everything about her husband's behavior resembled someone with something to hide. The revolver Colby claimed she used, a heavy frame .357, became a focal point. Firearm experts reconstructed the shot angle, recoil force, and expected weapon behavior, and their findings broke Colby's narrative completely. If Kristen fired it under her chin, the recoil would have forced the barrel upward. The gun would have rotated and fallen away. The position would have been different. Powder trace patterns would have shifted. The angle didn't align with her arm length. The darkness made self-firing even less plausible. Most chilling of all, her arm length and strength did not match the required physical force to hold aim and fire the weapon in the exact way Colby claimed. Statistically, it was nearly impossible. Forensically, it was unbelievable. Detectives now knew. If Kristen didn't fire the gun, someone else did. Investigators revisited Colby's timeline. He said he was asleep. but neighbors heard noises inconsistent with sleep. He said he didn't know where the gun was kept, but fingerprints proved he handled the weapon. He said he woke up and found Kristen, but digital evidence showed he was awake earlier than he admitted. He said she had been acting depressed, but her conversations with friends showed optimism, not despair. And then came the most damning detail. 10 days before her death, Colby searched, "How much is life insurance payout for spouse? Not for my spouse. Not even life insurance. Life insurance payout." That phrasing alone chilled prosecutors. It wasn't a question about bills. It wasn't about planning or responsibility. It was a question about profit. 10 days later, Kristen was found dead beside his firearm. After months of suspicion, inconsistencies, and forensic contradictions, the sheriff's investigators brought their full reconstruction to the original coroner. Photos, autopsy notes, weapon tests, behavioral reports, digital evidence, psychological autopsy results, life insurance timelines, Colby's affair logs, his financial records, his purchase history. The coroner reevaluated everything, meticulously, and finally, courageously, the coroner admitted, the original ruling was wrong. This was no suicide. This was homicide. The death certificate was formally changed. And with that correction, the entire case shifted from suspicion to prosecution. July 14, 2021. Nearly 2 years after Kristen's death, detectives finally moved in with a warrant. The evidence was now overwhelming. Too consistent, too damning, too mathematically precise to ignore. Life insurance searches, fair messages, financial behavior, forensic contradictions, a psychological autopsy, stage scene, and a young woman's death that simply did not align with the story her husband had crafted. Colby Trickle was arrested for a first-degree premeditated murder, interference with law enforcement. When officers approached him, he didn't collapse. He didn't shake. He didn't ask if Kristen's family was okay. He asked for a lawyer, emotionless, calm in a way that only deep calculation can produce. By then, detectives had realized something chilling. Kristen's death wasn't a moment of panic. It was a plan. In September 2023, the trial began. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, neighbors, investigators who had lived this case for years, and Kristen's family, who had fought relentlessly to overturn the suicide ruling. The prosecution built its case piece by piece, each detail striking harder than the last. The life insurance search. Life insurance payout for spouse, typed just 10 days before Kristen died. The flirtatious secret conversations. Messages showing emotional investment elsewhere. A motive. A fresh start without the burden of a marriage. The money. Over $120,000 collected soon after her death. Spent rapidly, impulsively, including the infamous purchase of a life-sized sex doll. The gun. A .357 revolver too heavy for Kristen to comfortably fire, especially at the angle reported. Recoil patterns inconsistent with a self-inflicted shot. The dark room. Lights off, almost unheard of in suicide dynamics. The psychological autopsy. Kristen had no indicators of suicidal ideation. Instead, she displayed future-oriented thinking and stable emotional behavior. The stage scene. Phone placement, gun placement, body position. All inconsistent with self-harm. Each witness added another fracture to Colby's alibi. His story, once thin, now tore apart completely. Colby's attorneys attempted to argue. Kristen was depressed. The investigators were biased. The digital searches were curiosity, not intention. His purchases after her death were unrelated coping. His affair was emotionally insignificant. But every claim collapsed under cross-examination. There was no evidence Kristen suffered any severe mental distress. There was no evidence investigators manipulated anything. There was no reasonable explanation for the timing of his searches. And his own messages, flirtatious, emotional, invested, betrayed any attempt to minimize the affair. It became obvious. Colby was rewriting the story in real time. But the data refused to lie. On September 21, 2023, the jury returned guilty of first-degree premeditated murder, guilty of interference with law enforcement. The courtroom erupted in tears, Kristen's family holding one another, investigators dropping their shoulders in relief, the community finally seeing justice breathe. For years, her death certificate carried the wrong story. Now the truth stood tall. In November 2023, Colby Trickle was sentenced to life in prison, without possibility of parole for 50 years. The judge did not hold back. He addressed the coldness of the act, the premeditation, the financial motive, the manipulation, the boldness of staging a suicide, the betrayal of the vows he made to Kristen. Then the final blow came not from the judge, but from the coroner. Kristen's death certificate was officially amended from suicide to homicide. Her name finally was freed from the lie he'd used to hide his crime. For Kristen's family, justice did not erase grief, but it restored truth. They spent years fighting against a narrative that never fit. They pushed investigators. They demanded clarity. They refused to accept what their hearts knew wasn't possible. Their perseverance ultimately changed everything. Investigators who worked the case described it as one of the most emotionally demanding of their careers, not because of the violence itself, but because the truth had been buried under an official ruling that never made sense. And once the truth finally surfaced, Kristen's name was no longer trapped inside a false ending. Kristen Trickle is remembered for her warmth, her laughter, her gentle spirit. Her story now fuels conversations about hidden domestic violence, life insurance, related homicides, suicide misclassification, forensic gun analysis, behavioral red flags in relationships. Her family continues to honor her life, not the way she died, but the way she lived. Daughter, friend, sister, a young woman who deserved a long, full life. Her story now stands as a warning, a lesson, and a reminder. Sometimes justice is slow, but when it comes, it rewrites the truth. If you found this case fascinating, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. We post crime case videos every night. Until next time, stay sharp, stay vigilant.